The Chinese foreign minister, also here, hit back and told me that the world had nothing to fear from Huawei or China. What about Huawei? The UK has decided to cooperate with Huawei on 5G.
Huawei 就是一个民营企业。
Huawei is a private company.
它应该跟其他企业得到同样的平等的待遇。
It should be treated equally and the same way as any other
而
company.
且华为已经公开讲，它可以跟任何政府、任何怀疑它的组织签署无后门协议。
And Huawei has pledged to sign no backdoor deal agreement with any government or organization.
我还没看到任何其他的同性
I
企业
haven't seen any other
做出这种
telecommunication
承诺，
company making that promise.
还不值得信任吗？
Is Huawei trustworthy enough?
Thank you. But if Chinese growth is a threat to some, it's an opportunity for others. The first ever bilateral meeting between a NATO Secretary General and a Chinese foreign minister has taken place here. And what was your message to the Chinese?
My message to the Chinese foreign minister was that I think we should strengthen the dialogue between NATO and China. And NATO is an alliance based on some core values: democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and of course we don't always look eye to eye on all issues when it comes to China. But at the same time, I think it is value in having a dialogue with China on issues like the Middle East, Afghanistan, arms control, and other issues, because China is becoming more and more important for world economy and also for the security environment which surrounds us.
The US delegation this year has been huge. From Pelosi to Pompeo, they've repeated one message: China is a threat. European leaders have watched, but have they listened? Britain's defiance of America over Huawei has split the field, and Washington is not giving in. Alistair Buckle, Sky News, Munich.
Well, the government is in talks with Beijing over the construction of HS2 after China's state-owned railway company said it could build the line in just 5 years at a much lower cost than currently forecast. The Department for Transport says it wants to consider approaches that offer taxpayers value for money, but others have concerns over giving China control of such a major project. Emma Birchley reports.
Faster, cheaper to build, and delivered a decade sooner. Take on board the promises of the China Railway Construction Corporation, and trains like these will be transporting passengers on the HS2 high-speed link within 5 years. The question is, at what cost? For one MP, there's too much at stake.
I think we've got to be cautious that when we hear that things are going to be reduced by, timing is going to be reduced by a quarter, we're importing Chinese ways of doing things that don't include simply nationalising private property and using prison labour as a forced labour force.
The Department for Transport has confirmed that preliminary discussions have already taken place between CRCC and HS2 Limited, after a letter was sent by the Chinese company offering a cost significantly lower than the current projections. The advantages are, in our opinion, too great to dismiss on the basis that there are obstacles to overcome. You will find that the Chinese way is to seek solutions, not linger on obstacles and difficulties. Work is already underway, like here at Great Missenden in Buckinghamshire, but as it stands, the final stretch may not be finished until 2040.
In the week, the Prime Minister controversially gave the go-ahead to a project already tens of billions over budget. You can see the temptation. But officials say while the government's always keen to consider money-saving options, no concrete commitments have been made.
It was only last month that Huawei was approved to supply equipment for the super-fast 5G mobile network. China's also helping provide the next generation of nuclear to the UK. And building railways is something the Chinese are already doing elsewhere, cutting swathes through Kenya's countryside on the government's orders to provide top-speed trains.
I think this is inevitably going to be seen in the wider context of China and Chinese companies clearly making lots of efforts to get involved with infrastructure assets across the world. However, I think some of those concerns may be slightly overblown. I don't think, from my understanding, that there's any intention here for China to own this asset.
CRCC certainly has plenty of practice. The state-owned builder has constructed most of China's 15,000-mile high-speed network. But whether or not Beijing's plan hits the buffers is about so much more than money. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
2 men have died today in separate incidents off the coast of Kent. A teenager was pulled from the sea in Herne Bay at lunchtime. He was pronounced dead at the scene. And the body of another man was recovered off the coast of Margate after he fell from a tanker early this morning. A new video has emerged of a car being driven on the wrong side of the road in the same location where Harry Dunn died last year. The 19-year-old was killed by Anne Sakulas, who was driving near RAF Croughton. Mrs. Sakulas claimed diplomatic immunity and returned to the US, where she's been since Harry died. The police said they'll investigate the latest near miss in Northamptonshire. Downing Street says that demands made by the European Union are unreasonable and ridiculous. The Prime Minister's Europe advisor, David Frost, and the UK's negotiating team have been meeting this week to finalise Britain's negotiating position. Here's the latest from our chief political correspondent, John Craig.
Well, these demands are set out in what's called an EU draft mandate. It's basically the EU setting out its proposals and demands for the trade negotiations that are going to begin shortly. Well, they include, this blueprint includes the EU saying it wants to police UK subsidies, impose rules on its tax regime, and ask the government to commit to aligning with the EU standards permanently, forever. Now, the government here says that Brussels already agreed deals with Canada, Korea and Japan, in which there are no such arrangements. And on the subsidies, the government here is saying that's unreasonable. On the tax proposals, which is a move to the UK to comply with EU standards and take part in cross-border tax planning, that is ridiculous, according to the British government. Now, earlier this week, at the European Parliament, the new European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said Mr. Johnson would have to accept what she called a level playing field on rules and standards. Well, the Prime Minister is rejecting that. In a speech a week or so ago at Greenwich on Brexit, he said there's no need for the UK to follow EU trade rules. There'll be no alignment with Brussels under any post-Brexit deal. Well, all this suggests that the negotiations which are going to be conducted by Mr. Frost and a 40-strong team of negotiators, well, they're going to be fraught and acrimonious, it looks, at this stage, and it must raise the prospect of no trade deal, which will alarm some Conservative MPs, but no doubt some will say, so what?
John Craig there in Downing Street. Now, the Duchess of Cambridge has spoken candidly about the pressures of motherhood. In her first ever podcast, Kate said she was a hands-on mum, but revealed that she struggled with mum guilt when she left her children to go to work. Sky's Ashna Hurinak reports.
There are very few people who are used to being seen by millions just a few hours after giving birth. Now the Duchess of Cambridge has spoken candidly on a parenting podcast about the challenges of being a mother in the public eye.
Do you struggle with mum guilt for having a
Yes,
child?
absolutely. I think anyone who doesn't as a mother is actually lying. Yeah, all the time. Yeah, and even this morning, going to the nursery visit here, George and Charlotte were like, "Mummy, how could you possibly not be dropping us off at school this morning?" But no, it's a constant challenge.
The mother of Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis says raising three royals is not without its challenges, even with the extra help of a nanny.
So you're pulled in all sorts of directions. Yeah, because when the third comes along, like how actually can you physically get all three children out of the car at the same time? You can't.
No.
There's such a sort of a pull, but I'm such a hands-on mum.
The Duchess also admits to not being the happiest when pregnant after suffering from severe morning sickness.
Lots of people have it far, far worse, but it was definitely a challenge, not just for me, but also for your loved ones around you. And I think that's the thing, is being pregnant, having a newborn baby and things like that impacts everybody in the family. William didn't feel he could do much to help, and, it's hard for everyone to see you suffering without actually being able to do anything about it.
This is Kate's first podcast appearance, but someone used to sharing their parenting stories is mother of two Kelly. She's blogged about her journey through motherhood for 7 years and finds aspects of the Cambridges' family life relatable.
I certainly don't have the wardrobe that she has, and my hair certainly is never in place like hers is. But she does have those instances in the public eye where her children aren't always behaving. Much like my own children, they're not always the quietest when you want them to be, and that's just the way that children are.
Since joining the royal family, the Duchess has dedicated her time to focusing on early years and championing children. This interview gives us a rare glimpse of what goes into nurturing her family. Never too far from judgment, public pressure, and plenty of attention. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, all the